People.
People, which one?
You refer
In the first one?
students. Refers to
Students, right? It refers to many students. We are talking, when we say who, we are talking to these many students, right? And what about this one?
personal trainer.
Personal trainer.
Personal trainer. Okay, very good. And how can we replace this who in these sentences? Is there any way in which we can replace who in the sentences?
Put that.
That, very good. We can replace who for that. We can say many students that have finished, or we can say personal trainer is someone that people hire, right? So we can replace who for that. And these are relative pronouns that we use for relative clauses, okay? So, but I want you to tell me, if you remember, what is a relative clause? What is a relative clause? What is a clause? Any idea? What is a clause?
Like a rule.
A rule? Okay. Not exactly, but okay, thank you. Any other ideas of what is a clause? I guess you learned this when you were in level 3, and also you learned this when you were in level advanced 1. So what is a clause?
Something we use relative pronouns to refer to a noun, or a person, or a thing.
Yes, this is a relative pronoun. But what about clause? A clause is similar to a sentence, okay? So it's a group of words containing a subject and a verb. This is a clause, a group of words that has a subject and a verb. It's similar to a sentence, okay? But it's different from a sentence because we can have many clauses in one sentence, okay? So a clause is a part of a sentence, okay? Es parte de una oración, the clause, okay? We're going to see some examples here. It says, I can't cook very well, but I can make quite good pancakes. So in this sentence, how many clauses do you think we have? How many clauses do you think we have in this sentence? What do you think?
2.
2. Okay, very good, very good. Which ones?
I can't cook very well. And the second, I make quite good pancakes.
Very good. Yes, we have 2 clauses in one sentence, in this sentence, right? Okay, how can you realize this? Because in these clauses, we have a subject, okay, and we have a verb, right? So in one sentence, we can have more than one clauses, okay? So let's see. And now, what is a relative clause? Now that we know what is a clause, what do you think is a relative clause? Now that you know what is a clause, what is a relative clause?
But.
Okay, but is a relative clause. Okay, but is a conjunction. A conjunction. So what is a conjunction? Is the word that join these 2 clauses in one sentence. Okay.
Well, a relative clause is like a sentence, but it doesn't have a clear meaning by itself. It has to be connected to to understand it.
Okay, could be. Let's see here. It is a clause that starts with a relative pronoun. A relative clause is a clause that starts with a relative pronoun. Ok, por ejemplo, esta es una clause y podemos empezarla con un relative pronoun y esa es nuestra relative clause. Ok, how many relative pronouns do you remember? Tell me some of them. Which relative pronouns do you remember? We see two of them. Which ones?
Who,
Whose,
Who,
that,
whose,
that,
where,
which,
when,
when,
whose,
whose,
where,
where. Very good. Yes, we have a lot of relative pronouns.
what,
Okay. What? Okay, so here we have who, which, that, whose, where, whom. Okay, we have a lot of them. Okay, these are some examples. Very good. So this is a relative clause. The woman who called you is your dentist. It's my dentist. Okay, so as you can see, we have the relative pronoun here. We have a subject and we have a verb. Okay, very good. So we know now what is a clause and we know what is a relative clause. Okay, let's see now what type of relative clauses do we have? Okay, we have two kinds of relative clauses. Do you remember what kind of relative clauses do we have? What kind of relative clauses do we have? No? Okay, so we have two kinds. We have defining and the other is?
not defining.
Non-defining relative clause. Do you remember what is the difference between defining and non-defining relative clause? No, none of you?
The defining, they give detailed information defining a general term or maybe expression, and the non-defining give additional information.
Yes,
But
very
not
good.
define.
Defining relative clauses give important information, okay, essential information. And non-defining relative clauses give extra information, information that is not important or is not essential to understand the meaning of the sentence, okay? So, essential information, for example, the guy who fixed my car is my cousin. Okay, so this is essential information because we are talking about the guy who fixed my car. Okay, we are not talking about other guy. We are talking about this guy who fixed the car. Okay, and here we have the non-defining relative clauses that give extra information. For example, my cousin is a mechanic. Okay, who plays soccer at the same field as you. Okay, as you can see, this is a complete idea. Okay, we can understand this idea without the relative clause that we have here. Okay, but in this, if we take the relative clause, the idea is not complete. We cannot say the guy is my cousin, right? So the guy who fixed my car is my cousin. So this is the difference between defining relative clauses and non-defining relative clauses, okay? Essential information in the first and extra information in non-defining relative clauses. And something that makes the difference between these two type of clauses is the comma, okay? In non-defining relative clauses, we need a comma to separate the relative clause, okay? As you can see here. Okay, good. So let's see here. Now we are going to talk about the relative pronouns. You mentioned some of them, right? We have who, we have which, we have whom, that, whose. We have a lot of relative pronouns more, but we are going to see these ones that we have here, okay? For example, when we say who, we are referring to what?
people,
To people, to a person or to people, right? Very good. For example, the woman who lives next door is a doctor, okay? Something that I want you to take into account is the verb, okay? When we are talking about he or she here, the verb is like for the third person, Okay, but when we are talking about they here, for example, my relatives who live, okay, si hablan de ella o de él, acá de una tercera persona, el verbo debe ir en tercera persona. Pero si acá hablan de they, de you, de cualquier otra persona, no necesitamos poner el verbo para tercera persona, okay? So, what about which?
Relates to animals and
Objects.
Objects, animals, yes, or things, right? We can talk
Yeah.
about things or about animals. Yes, very good. John bought a TV, which is bigger than mine. Okay, so which is referred to the TV, right? What about whom? What can you tell me about whom?
Two people.
Yes, to people too, but what is the meaning of this? Is the same as who? Is the same as who or no? Whom and who are the same? What do you think? No, they are not, right? They
It's
are
more,
not the same. What?
more used for the group of person, plural.
No, not
No.
exactly. We can use who for plural too. Or for example, people who study English are intelligent, for example. Okay, good. So we use whom as the object of a sentence, and we use who as the subject of a sentence. Let's see an example here. He is the teacher whom we adore. Okay, whom is the object here. ¿Por qué? ¿Cuál es el objeto de la oración? ¿Alguien me puede decir? Who is the subject and who is the object? How can we define this? What is a subject and what is an object in a sentence?
He is
What is a subject?
The teacher.
Sure.
What is a subject in a sentence? Not in this one, in any sentence. What does subject mean?
The noun.
Okay, we can use nouns for subject, but what does subject mean?
The person that we are talking about.
Yes, okay. Anything else? The subject is the person we are talking about in our sentence and is the person or the people who does the action, okay? Who perform the action in a sentence, okay? For example, John bought a TV. What is the subject in this sentence?
John.
John, because he did this action, okay? Él hace esta acción, él realiza la acción. So this is the subject. And TV is the object. Why do you think TV is the object? Or what is the definition of object of a sentence? ¿Qué me pueden decir? The object is the thing or the person who receives the action. ¿Ok? A la persona o el objeto a quien la acción está dirigida. Por ejemplo, en esta oración, he is the teacher whom we adore. ¿A quién adoramos? Al profesor. Entonces, nuestra acción está dirigida hacia nuestro profesor. Por eso, whom se utiliza como el object of the sentence. ¿Ok? Object of the sentence, and who is the subject of the sentence. ¿Ok? Luego vamos a verlo en algunos otros ejemplos y ejercicios para que les quede un poco más claro. So you have to be clear in this. Whom as the object of the sentence and who as the subject of the sentence. Okay? Then we have that. We can replace that for who, for which, or whom. Okay? So we can use that for people, or we can use that for things, objects, or animals, right? For example, the woman that lives next door is a doctor. So it's exactly the same sentence, but we replace that, right? John bought a TV that is bigger than mine. It's exactly the same sentence, but we can replace which for that. And the last one, he's the teacher that we adore. Okay, so we can replace whom for that. Okay, so that can replace these three relative pronouns. Here we have whose. What do you understand for whose? Any ideas? Or yes, for possessions, right? When we want to talk about possessions, when we want to say his, her, or their, okay, we use whose. For example, we met a girl whose father was a Hollywood stuntman. Okay, so, ¿de quién era el padre? ¿De quién es el padre?
De ella.
Of the
De
girl.
ella, of the girl, right? So, it's the father of the girl. It's the girl's father. So when we want to talk about possession, we use whose. Okay? Good. Let's see. We are going to practice a little bit about the relative clauses and relative pronouns with this sheet. Okay? I'm going to send you the link to the WhatsApp group. I want you to work along, and then we are going to check the exercises. Okay?